y'all. Well, the parts came in today to populate up the power supply for our preamp. And so we're going to jump on putting this thing together. We're going to start with these large power resistors. And again, I do this because these are the least heat sensitive parts on the board, and you're not nearly as likely to burn them with like the barrel of the soldering iron as you are the capacitors and some other things like the diodes and the bridge rectifier, that kind of stuff. So to see the values of this, we look on the other side of the board and flip this around. We have a 3K, a 3.3K, has a 1.1K. These are all 3 watts. But you can see it also says underneath here, you can, instead of this resistor, you can use a 20 Henry, 20 milliamp choke. And so that's what we're going to be doing. So we're not going to put a resistor here. We're going to solder these 2 guys in, and we're going to populate all this stuff on the other side of the board. So let's find our resistors. These are either the 3K or the 3.3K. Looks like these are the 3K. So we need one of those. And then we need a 3.3K. They're in this bag right here. And that's our 3.3K. So let's go ahead and put these 2 in the board. And you can hold it up. And one of the commenters said you can buy a tool for bending these leads. I guess you could, but I've got some fingernails. I honestly don't see any reason to spend money buying a tool to do something for that, but you may feel differently. And again, we want to space these guys up off the board a little bit, like that. And again, I'm just going to double check that I'm putting these in the right place. This should be the 3K. Yep. I did like what somebody suggested about making up some little spacers to put underneath these resistors when I'm soldering them so it holds them up at the right distance. I'm probably going to hunt down something to use for that in the future, but for right now, I'm just going to use this little piece of cardboard right here, or some little brown paper that I folded up, and let's solder these first 2 resistors in place. Clean my iron off. There it goes. Again. And again, try to concentrate the heat on the board to start with, and then feed the solder in, and got them spaced up like that. trim these two leads off. Okay. The next ones are, there's a 20K 3 watt that goes there, and then there's a 200K 3 watt that goes there, and then we have a couple of 0.22 ohm 3 watts that go right there. So let's get our 200K out. There's 200K, real close to it. Again, you just gotta hold it up there and look where the other hole is. And I get my fingernail, bend it over, and we'll put that guy in. And then the last one is the 20K. And even though I only needed like one of these, some of these actually, buying 10 of them was the same price as buying 3 of them. So it made a whole lot of sense to buy 10 of them. And then in the future, if I need some of these value, I've got them in stock, and I don't have to make a special order. So especially when we're experimenting and trying different things on circuits, sometimes it's nice to say, okay, let's see what a 20K sounds like in this circuit. And if you got one in your bag, it's easy enough to just plop one in there. So we're going to put our little spacers under these resistors. And then solder these two guys in place. There's that one. And then that one. Because these two leads are so close together, I'm going to go ahead and trim that and get it out of my way. And then hold this down. And then solder this one. Like that. Pull our little spacers out. Then we got those two. We're just like we want them. All right. I'm not sure. These didn't really solder good all the way through, so I'm going to put, even though I probably don't need to, I'm going to put solder a little bit from this direction too. Because they may be relying on this joint to connect the bottom side of the board to the top side of the board through this solder. And they're depending on it being soldered good on both sides. And so it's not going to hurt anything to come back and solder it on this side of the board too. And see, this one's a little harder to solder because it's heating. It has to heat up. This whole piece here is acting like a heat sink, and I'm actually going to turn up I'm soldering it on 700 degrees. I'm going to try 750 and see if that lets me heat these things up a little quicker. So we don't need to install that one. So we have these diodes here. These are all Zener diodes. And then these are just plain diodes. We have these two resistors here. There's a 33K here, which I'm going to solder in later after I test the brightness of this LED, which I'll go over that in another video. And I'm just trying to see if there's any other resistors on here. I'm not seeing any. So, let's go ahead and solder in these diodes. First, let's do these plain diodes. And these are 1000 volt, 1 amp diodes. And these are this is the diode bridge that's rectifying the plate voltage to the tubes. This is the rectifier that's going to be doing the heater rectification, because we're running DC heaters. Actually, I forgot we got these two little resistors here, the 0.22 ohm ones. Here they are. And these are a couple of little 3-watt wire wound resistors. We just have to assume, since these are fairly high quality resistors, or should be, that they are in fact 0.22 ohms. And this board's got a bunch of different holes for putting these in, so just pick whichever two you like. And I'm gonna put my paper at an angle like that. Clean the iron off. Get some fresh solder. This time I'm gonna leave the heat on there just a little longer. See if we can get it to flow out on the other side better. So we don't have to come back and resolder on the other side of the board. We shouldn't have to. So we'll just give it a little more solder and see if that fixes that issue. Okay, let's trim these leads off. Yep, and you can see it flowed through much better this time on both sides of the board. So I just needed a little more heat and feed a little more solder in there. Okay, so now we're going to put these, what I'm going to call the power diodes, in place. And these guys are going to go, they've got a mark on them on this end. And that mark is on the same direction that this line is. And that's like the direction of flow. So you want to make sure you have this band towards this end on all 4 of these. So again, we're going to bend this over. And bend this over. I'm going to go ahead and bend all 4 of these up. And then we'll put them through. Like I said, these are 1000 volt, 1 amp diodes. And then these other ones over here are Zener diodes, and they've created a string of Zener diodes to fix the plate voltage. And that's why it allows, was it 230 to 280 volts on the input? And that helps you from having to have like an exact transformer, which is kind of a nice feature that they designed into this board. Because ordinarily we have to kind of mess around with transformer primary voltages and secondary voltages, and you've seen in these other videos where we've dealt with some of these Chinese products or Chinese tube products that have 110 volt primaries, and then when they're brought over here to this country, they end up with too much plate voltage. And so, you know, it's nice that they've kind of figured out a way to make this kind of self-voltage regulate. So let's get this one in place. Again, like I said, I'm not going to argue with one of the commenters that was saying that I should get a tool for bending the leads over. If you want to do that, that's fine. I mean, I can be pretty anal retentive about some things, but for some reason that just doesn't, that's not one of them. Okay. I'll flip that one over. There we go. So let's solder these diodes in place. And then we'll do the string of Zener diodes. And then I think all we've got left is the capacitors. These diodes are heat sensitive, so you don't want to leave the iron on them too long. That's why it's better to have the heat turned up on the iron so you can like get the board hot first and then bring the iron over and touch the lead and solder. See if we can get this where y'all can see it better. Okay, and then I'm going to cut, like I did on the other side, I'm going to cut these leads out of the way so I can get to these that are left easier. I'm going to bend them over like that. That's all looking nice. Got a little bit of solder coming through the board, which is what we want to see. I'm glad from the comments I heard that some of you say that watching me do this is a therapeutic kind of thing to watch. So I'm glad that some of y'all at least are enjoying watching this. And let's pull these out. These two down here on this end look like they could use a little bit of solder coming through from this direction. And I'm not surprised because this is kind of that big, larger area kind of heat sink. So I'm going to heat up the board first. And then come in and flow a little solder around the... So I'm going to see if I can show you this. See, I'm holding the iron away from the actual joint to kind of heat up this larger piece of this ground plane and get the solder melting on it. And then come into the lead and flow around it. This one could use just a bit. The rest of these got nice, I don't know if you can see, they got nice solder joints all the way around both sides. So those are all good. Okay, on this string of Zeners that uses two 68 volt 5 watt Zeners and then two 75 volt Zeners, and you add them all up together and it's 286 volts, I think it came up to. So now it wants, this is a 5373, and it wants the two 5373s down on this end. I haven't really followed the traces to see if this matters, or if you can just put two of one and two in the other in any position. But I'm gonna put them where the board's showing to put them. That one needs kind of messed up bending that one. Bend that one over down there. These guys got some pretty fat leads on them. And then make sure this is the other 5373. Yep. And as you can see, one goes one direction, then this one goes that direction. So they kind of flip-flop back and forth. And what we're probably going to do is, I mean, I was all excited this wasn't going to take very long, and it is taking a little longer than I thought. So this may end up being 2 videos, which is fine. After I've soldered these Zeners in, I think I'm going to split the video here and then come back and do the capacitors. Again, anytime I let the iron sit for a little bit, you clean it off. And then if you get too much solder on there, you can just go like, and it shakes it off onto your workspace. And again, I'm going to heat up this little plane and then come over and flow the solder in. And then I'm going to do this same end down here while I've got this heated up. And then I turn this around, and I'm kind of spacing this up so it doesn't push the diode up through the board. It keeps the spacing. And then yeah, see, this has got the same issue with this big ground plane. Absorbs so much heat, it's not letting the the solder come through like I like to see. I'm going to put a little dash right there too. Here we go. Okay. Now I intentionally didn't solder this one because I'm going to come back and do these two at the same time. And that's going to be these 75 volt Zeners. And we'll check the numbers just to make sure that we're putting the right ones in the board. 73, 74. And what really made me decide to get the higher quality parts is I started thinking about these Zener diodes. And I was thinking about how accurate is the voltage going to be on a made in China Zener diode. And are we going to end up having a plate voltage problem from them not being accurate? And when I started questioning that, I just went, I'm just going to replace all this stuff. And again, make sure the line on the part is at the correct end. And here's what the schematic versus the actual part looks like. So just make sure the line is like it's showing in this picture here. Okay, so let's solder these two up. Again, I'm going to heat the trace up in the middle here. Get that warmed up and then come over and do this part. A little extra solder. So maybe it'll go through this time. And there's that one. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Sorry, I keep kind of pulling the board towards me. Okay, and then attach this right here. And that's all our diodes. So, like I said, I think I'm going to flip this to the next video. We've got all the resistors on the board. We've got all the individual diodes on the board. We've got to come back and put this bridge rectifier in. There's a transistor down here, handful of capacitors, and we're all done. So, hope you're enjoying this video, and if you are, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you back in a few for more power supply circuit board fun. Have a great day.